The idea for this video comes from a recent trip to Mumbai in India. During my short stay there, I got the impression that India is one of the places in the world, like the USA for instance, where religion is very important to many people, and where it's somehow integrated and supportive of highly visible economic inequality. This combination, pervasive religiosity and an almost shamelessly obvious gap between rich and poor, made me think of Marx's metaphor of religion as the opium of the people. It seems as relevant as ever, and it may be timely to reflect on its rather complex meaning. I will address 7 layers of the metaphor opium of the people. But before doing so, 2 preliminary remarks. First, there are 2 slightly different English versions of Marx's metaphor: opium of the people and opium for the people. Opium of the people seems to say that religion originates in the suppressed masses. Opium for the people seems to say that it is imposed on them by their suppressors. Marx, however, didn't write in English, but in German. He used the expression Opium des Volkes, literally the people's opium, and this can mean both the opium of and for the people. So where does this metaphorical opium come from for Marx? In the critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, where he uses the metaphor, Marx, basically following Feuerbach, says that the world of man creates religion and its gods, not the other way around. More specifically, he says that state and society, or the socio-economic reality, produce religion. For Marx, religion is neither created alone by the suppressed nor by their suppressors, but by society as a whole. It's a narrative, a belief by which a social structure in total makes sense of and supports itself. Second, the metaphor doesn't simply condemn religion as bad. Marx was not a Puritan or moralist. The use of opium or other drugs was not a sin for him, no ethical failure, but a pathology, an unhealthy lifestyle. Rather than condemning the use of opium or religion as wrong on principle, he saw both as ambiguous. They are simultaneously pleasurable and sickening. Their effects and side effects are good and bad at the same time. Now, to 7 layers of meaning of the opium of the people. First, opium is a hallucinogen. First, opium is a hallucinogen. I hope I pronounced that right. And so is religion. Both create illusions, as Marx says. And using an expression from Hegel's phenomenology of spirit, a false upside down or inverted world, a verkehrte Welt. Opium and religion make people hold on to a false consciousness that prevents them from seeing the world they live in right. Religion and opium seem to reveal deep truth or spiritual insights. They provide grandiose answers to the biggest possible questions, which are in fact shallow. Religion is bad philosophy and bad science, a rather low-quality theory of everything. Or, as Marx says quite harshly, der Geist geistloser Zustände, can be translated as the spirit of cluelessness. The inverted consciousness of religion became obvious to me in Mumbai when I saw a religious ceremony on a street involving a cow. The cow was dressed in a fancy outfit, was paid respects, and given favors in various ways. Apparently the purpose was to honor and serve the cow. From my perspective, however, it was pretty obvious that the cow was forced to do whatever the religious practitioners wanted it to do. In fact, the masters of the ceremony were not serving the cow, but the cow was serving them. This scene illustrates how religion tends to establish moral regimes and beliefs, which in fact glorify not so moral power structures. In a topsy-turvy way, religion converts regimes of domination into doing good. This inverted moral sanctioning by religion, as Marx calls it, was, by the way, also analyzed quite pointedly by Nietzsche and Zhuangzi, the Taoist. Second, opium and religion are both stimulants. They not only induce a false consciousness of what is seemingly true and moral, but combine this illusion with emotional elation and joy. They produce, as Marx says, enthusiasm. And this word is telling. Based on the Greek word theos, for God, it literally means being possessed by God. A crazy frenzy, a temporary high, experienced with great emotional excitement, where people lose it and are out of control. The enthusiastic aspect of religion had already been rejected by Marx's predecessors Kant and Hegel, who despised it as a loss of rationality and autonomy. Religious ecstasy was incompatible with the cold progress of reason favored by these quite German Enlightenment thinkers. Third, according to a paper in the scientific journal Neurology, ancient Greeks, Indians, Chinese, Egyptians, Romans, Arabs, people in the Middle Ages, Europeans from Renaissance to now, knew opium as a panacea for all maladies. Religion, too, is such a panacea, a medicine promising to heal all ills at once. The core of the ambiguity of religion and opium is, I think, that both have been regarded as a most potent cure, whereas in fact they are, at least in Marx's view, highly pathological. Most religions offer soteriological promises, immortality or a paradise, relief from misery, or at minimum, divine solutions of everyday problems, and good luck when it's needed. Suffering, not suffering, is arguably the basic binary code of religion. Different from what Luhmann says, by the way, but that's a topic for another video. With profound irony, Marx uses religious metaphors to deconstruct the perfidy of religion, which creates or extends suffering by promising to cure it. He calls it the halo of the veil of tears. Like opium, religion adorns misery rather than ending it. Fourth, opium and religion are both sedatives. Despite delivering short-term highs, in the long run they make their users sleepy, compliant, and passive. Marx says, the criticism of religion is the prerequisite of all criticism. This implies that once people free themselves from their religious habits, they will not only be able to understand their pathological reality, but also be ready to engage in revolutionary practice. Fifth, during Marx's lifetime, both religion and opium were endemic, particularly among working-class people. According to Anna Brereton, opium was cheaper than alcohol, and the working classes saw it as an effective hangover cure. By the 1870s and 1880s, addiction was so widespread that a new word to describe the phenomenon entered the English language: morphinomania. Opium infiltrated all of society on a global scale. It was far more than a mere recreational drug. Like religion, it was tightly interwoven with a capitalist economy, warfare, and politics. The critique of Hegel's philosophy of right was written at the end of 1843. The first Opium War between Britain and China had just ended. British imperialism, which Marx closely followed and critiqued, simultaneously imposed opium and religion with military means on its victims. The same ships brought opium and missionaries, for instance to Macau, where we're recording this video now. Sixth, both opium and religion are addictive. The life of drug addicts revolves around the habit. It intrudes all their planning and thinking in all spheres of life. Opium and religion can be very invasive. In my view, the worst aspect of both religion and drugs is their suffocating effect. They become a sort of second coding, overshadowing literally everything a person does. Addicts of religion are existentially overpowered by it, similar to drug addicts. The way they dress becomes a religious statement. Their eating habits are regulated by religion. They love their partners and have sex with them in a religious framework. They raise their children religiously. The books they read are religious. And in everything they see, in every grain of sand, they see the same monochrome religious meaning. To conclude on a more positive note, another parallel between religion and opium, although not mentioned and probably not intended by Marx, is their psychedelic effect. This effect can be distinguished from the hallucinatory effect mentioned earlier. Hallucinations can become illusions taken to be real. That is, they can turn into delusions, as Richard Dawkins would say. Psychedelic effects are defined by Wikipedia somewhat differently, as non-ordinary mental states, resulting in specific psychological, visual, and auditory changes. In popular language, they are called trips, a temporary sensual and mental journey from which a person returns to normality. Not every person taking such a trip becomes an addict. Not every person having a religious experience becomes a believer. There's a middle way between addiction and abstention. Complete sobriety can be just as suppressive as addiction. And radical opposition to religiosity can become another kind of fundamentalism. I don't know if Marx himself smoked any opium, but apparently he liked drinking. And still he managed to write some interesting books. The same is the case with some religious people. Drug consumption today is probably at least as widespread as in Marx times. And other than Marx hoped, religion is still alive and well too. In some secular societies, as in Germany, traditional religion has been largely replaced with a new civil religion. In a way, civil religion can be even more perfidious than real religion, because its believers often don't realize how fundamentalist they are, albeit in a secular way. Civil religious fundamentalists are like addicts in denial.